Maurice Dubois, and thanks for joining us for a look back. When it comes to investigative reporting, there really is no one quite like our Marcia Kramer, who for the last 32 years since arriving at CBS2 has been bringing stellar and informative stories to our viewers. And tonight, we're going to take a look back at some of the most memorable headlines that Marcia has covered and investigated, stories that have helped make changes to better our communities. She's also covered some of the biggest political scandals and helped hold politicians accountable. Her passion has had her traveling the world to interview some of the most newsworthy people. And there is no question that being a firefighter is one of the most dangerous and important jobs in our country. But back in 1992, the FDNY was lacking a very critical piece of equipment that's needed to protect our bravest from serious injury. Marcia showed our viewers how a city the size of New York and a department as big as the FDNY had gone on for so long without bunker gear. And it became her mission to change that.
It's a subject New York City's top officials seem unwilling to talk about. Why the city's firefighters are sent in day after day to fight dangerous fires with gear that leaves them open to serious injury. This was Mayor Dinkins after an appearance this morning.
We've got a schedule availability. I'd be delighted to talk to you, Anna, on that subject, but I can't do it here.
But at that availability, the mayor's response to the question of why the city's fire department still has old-fashioned uniforms was to refer all calls to the department itself.
The professionals can talk to you about it far more intelligently than I.
At issue, bunker gear like this, burn-preventing uniforms that Channel 2 has been telling you about exclusively for 7 long months. It's used by just about every big city fire department like Los Angeles, Miami, and Philadelphia, captured in action by the TV show On Scene. The International Association of Firefighters said today they're amazed that bunker gear is not used here. Here's what the mayor said.
I am not making the judgment. I am no more responsible for whether or not they use bunker pants than I am for whether or not the police officers use 9mm.
But Mr. Mayor, you're the mayor of this city. In the last 4 months, 90 firemen have received injuries to their legs and thighs that would have been 100% prevented.
You'll get a great film clip this way, Marcia. And you will have that comment and you'll have my response, and it's nice, but you seek to engage in a debate with me on this, and I've told you from the outset that it's a judgment to be made by the fire department.
The fire department's judgment is to do a pilot study, the 3rd pilot study done in the last decade.
We would rather take, the criticism now that we're taking, and understandably, than to rush into something, just as the police department had some concerns about 9mm. Our concerns are what are the downsides, what are the bad effects that bunkers may have on firefighters.
Bad effects like perhaps limiting mobility. But fireman Billy Bolcha, who's in the New York Hospital burn unit right now, suffering from the very leg, thigh, and groin injuries that are virtually eliminated by the new uniforms, isn't buying that line.
I would never go back into a fire again without bunker pants. And it just wouldn't happen. I would never do it again.
And the Firefighters Union president made this comparison to another highly dangerous problem in New York City.
When somebody was shot in Jefferson High School, they came up with $28 million for metal detectors the next day. We're asking for $7 million. And for $7 million to save $8 million in the future. So actually we're asking you to save money, save lives, save suffering.
When you look at the equipment that they were using and the equipment that they will now be using, you can see that this will offer a much greater degree of protection against burns and possibly, hopefully, save lives in the future.
The old gear, coat and boots, left legs and thighs exposed, especially in a duck walk position. The new bunker gear fully covers the legs with a lighter fabric. Captain Ray Downey has already worn the gear in fires.
Well, it gives you a greater sense of chances of survival. No chance of really getting serious burns.
The department will distribute 300 sets a week until all 11,000 firefighters have them by next spring. The tab, nearly $13 million. Captain Marty McTighe was hospitalized 100 days from a Con Ed fire in '92. He says the new gear would have diminished his injuries.
I had 8 skin grafts while I was there. I'm sure that would have been cut in at least half.
Many officials acknowledge the decision to get the gear came in large part because of the 2-year crusade by Channel 2 News and reporter Marcia Kramer.
Marcia Kramer was instrumental in bringing pressure to bear on the former administration, and we thank, especially Marcia Kramer, and we thank Channel 2 and this mayor and this commissioner.
One of Channel 2's reports was on the tragedy of firefighter Bruce Lyle, whose severe leg burns in 1985 required 4 skin grafts and 13 painful months of recovery. Having sued the city and been awarded $1 million, he's thrilled the safer equipment is now on the job.
If I had bunker gear at the time, these injuries would have been prevented.
A recent fire that renewed the call for safer gear was the March apartment blaze near the Holland Tunnel that claimed the lives of 3 firemen, Chris Siedenberg, James Young, and Captain John Drennan, who died just last week. Would the new gear have saved them from the deadly flashover?
It probably would not have helped Chris Siedenberg and Jimmy Young. Of course, everything is speculative, but it probably would have been of some use to Captain Drennan.
And that last story was by our friend, our dear friend and colleague, the late John Slattery. And Marcia joins me now. And Marcia, a lot to unpack here. I mean, we're looking back and you see your passion, you see the power of reporting and staying on the trail of a story like that for 2 years, as John pointed out. What strikes you most as you look back?
Well, the thing that struck me most was seeing the pictures of the burns. You know, I had done those interviews and I had interviewed those people and seen in person the scars and the burns and the pain and the suffering. And that was what drove me all those 2 long years, talking to those firefighters and having them discuss injuries that could have been avoided. You know, what you don't understand is that many of them were wearing jeans when they responded to fires.
Which is unbelievable.
I mean, jeans,
right.
A pair of jeans. And when you're a firefighter, there's a lot you don't know about firefighting, but once I learned is that when, especially the nozzle guy, the guy that has to hold the nozzle, he's bending on his knees in jeans.
Right.
To hold the nozzle to fight a fire.
No padding, no protection.
No protection.
On earth?
And the thing is that those people were the ones that got the worst burns.
Sure, but what took so long? I mean, 2 years, and prior to that, it wasn't even part of the department. What took forever? Why?
Mayor Dinkins, as much as he was, you know, a lovely man, was resistant to it, and the fire department. You heard the then fire commissioner talking about it and saying, "Well, we don't know whether it's, you know, comparing it to the 9mm weapon." But the truth is that it cost a lot of money.
Right.
And it was a very, my recollection was it was $11 million was the first buy of the gear. And the city didn't want to spend it. I mean, pure and simple, the city didn't want to spend it. And, you know, there was an attitude, I think, in the fire department that they were talking to the mayor about it and saying to then Mayor Dinkins, you know, we don't want to spend that money right now. We've done it this way for 100 years. Why should we do it any differently? The problem was that the injuries were so serious. And it was the nozzle guys, the guys who were closest to the fire. The
flames.
That got the worst injuries.
Right. It would seem like a no-brainer, especially in retrospect, but thanks to your reporting.
2 years and many
staying on the case.
Confrontations with the mayor.
Yeah, tremendously gratifying. Thank you for that one, Marcia, and your due diligence on this FDNY bunker gear story did not go unnoticed by any stretch. Marcia was later honored by the city for her hard work and dedication to bring this story to the forefront. A job well done. All right, in just a moment, swiping school supplies for their own personal gain.
I know you take $350 for a skid of paper, other things like that. You charge money and they sell stuff on the street. What about that?
It's not true. Find out what these workers were doing and how Marcia got to the bottom of this situation. Our look back continues after this quick break. Welcome back. In 1995, Marcia exposed multiple levels of corruption in New York City schools. She tracked down the deliveries and sale of school copy paper to people with ties to a local printing company, school supplies that were not being used in our classrooms. And Marcia's here now, and this one is shocking on so many levels, the scale of it all. What shocked you the most about this one?
Well, what shocked me the most was it wasn't just paper. They would steal anything, toilet paper, supplies for cleaning the floors, you name it, they stole it, they stole it. Light bulbs, they sold everything on the black market. We followed them for 6 months. We saw them selling things all over the place. It was amazing.
Just cavalierly.
Just whatever they could steal, they sold.
It was a great business.
For them, it was a great business. It was terrible for the city.
Right, until you got on the trail.
But it did take a really long time.
Right, okay, let's take a look back at that story.
No more pencils, no more books could easily become the slogan for New York City school kids. And it's not because the Board of Ed isn't buying any. Take a look at this undercover video. This truck driver is unloading cases of paper that belong in schools. Only he's not delivering it to a school, it's going here to a lighting store. He's made a business out of selling school supplies to private businesses. And he's not alone.
Every day, truck drivers will get stuff to sell and pay off the guys on the loading dock. They sell like the paper, they sell to printers. Custodial supplies, they sell to other people. They sell bleach, Ajax, cleaning oil, disinfecting oil, calcium chloride.
We've hidden the identity of this man because for 9 months he worked in and around the loading docks at the Bureau of School Supplies. He witnessed truckers buying supplies off the docks, loaders taking payoffs, and tons of goods rerouted from classrooms to the black market.
If there was any way to get somebody in on a loading dock without them knowing it, you would hear them talk about how much money they make off of all this stuff.
So for weeks, we followed 2 of the many trucks that make school deliveries. One is owned by Jack Marchese, the other by Andy Baraba. And you wouldn't believe where they sell your children's school supplies. To places like Mossland Kennel, to an electrician who lives here and buys light bulbs, to the Axel Springs Auto Supply Shop, and to various printing plants. We found Andy in the parking lot of a Waldbaum supermarket in College Point. He was selling school Xerox paper to a man with ties to a local printing company. What are you doing here?
Doing a delivery.
Where'd you get the paper?
Huh?
Where'd you get the paper?
I don't know what you're talking about. Are you kidding me? Come on.
This paper is from the Bureau of Supplies.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
You paid for 30 cases on the loading docks today, didn't you?
No.
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't. It wasn't me.
Who was it?
No.
But it didn't take long for Andy to change his tune.
Number one, I only done this a few times, okay? You're wrong about the other ones.
We have you going to all these places.
It's me?
And Jack Marchese and the other people who do it. We got pictures of it.
Okay.
So why are you doing it?
You're right. You're right.
Mossland Kennel's owner said she didn't know she was buying supplies that belong in schools, and she downplayed her connection to Andy.
I've just gotten a couple of toilet papers from him, really. That's about all.
But that's not all, according to our informant.
This lady buys toilet paper, calcium chloride, bleach, Ajax, everything.
Twice, producer Patty Aronofsky followed Jack Marchese to Olympic Lighting in Queens, and twice he unloaded school paper.
He makes anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 extra a week.
We confronted him outside the Louis Armstrong School, where informants say he planned to short the school 100 cases of paper. You don't deliver paper to Olympic Lighting, you don't deliver lights to Olympic Lighting, you don't deliver rock salt to Olympic Lighting?
No, ma'am.
We have pictures of it.
Madam, sometimes, no, you don't.
Yes, we do. In fact, the owner of Olympic Lighting told us what he bought from Jack.
Some seafoam towels, some toilet paper, some rock salt, some bulbs, some copy paper.
While expressing surprise that the goods he purchased were school supplies, Olympic's owner admitted he still had rock salt bought from Jack in his shop. And it looked just like the rock salt we found on the Bureau of Supplies loading docks. Speaking of the loading dock, when truckers don't get goods to sell by shorting deliveries to the schools, they pay off loaders to fill their trucks with extra goods. 2 informants identified Angelo, Kenny, and Kevin as among those taking payoffs.
The main guy who has what to say is who gets what is the guy Angelo that works there.
We know that you take money from people to give them goods to sell on the street.
Me? No, I don't.
I know you take $350 for a skid of paper, other things like that. You charge money and they sell stuff on the street. What about that?
It's not true. Lots of times this stuff was given to me and I was told to get rid of it. Okay? Now, if you want to keep your job, that's what I was told you have to do.
We took our information to the Commissioner of School Investigations.
Our job in this office is to pursue those people whom you're talking about as vigorously as we can, and I certainly intend to review what you found and do that.
We wanted to know how they did it, and we got a partial answer and the shock of our lives when we visited the office of School Special Investigations Commissioner Edward Stancic today. Exhibit A, this dog-eared ledger, which, believe it or not, is the record-keeping system of the Bureau of School Supplies. Notice the entries in magic marker, pen, and even pencil.
I think the ledger book in today's day of computers and fax machines and CD-ROMs, I think that ledger book speaks for itself.
But that's not all. Despite the fact that the Bureau of Supply deals with hundreds of millions of dollars of school supplies, it was only after we aired our report that the Bureau's head, Kevin Gill, suggested to Schools Chancellor Ramon Cortines that they get a management consultant to advise them on warehouse management, purchasing, and delivery systems. Prosecutors certainly don't like the old system.
Well, it certainly doesn't provide the types of checks and balances that I think might deter criminal activity.
But even that's not all. As investigators working with the school special prosecutor poured through records today and logged other black market school supplies, they learned of a novel theory of the case. This from the very same Kevin Gill who runs the Bureau of School Supplies. In a memo to Chancellor Cortines, he suggests that an unidentified thief snuck onto the loading docks and made away with the goods. No, really. These are his words. Quote, "We believe a perpetrator showed up on December 14th and again on January 19th and removed a total of 430 cartons of paper from the building." Do prosecutors believe that?
At this juncture, I would argue that suggestion is somewhat doubtful.
What they do believe is that they have a hot potato to deal with when they want to deal with quickly.
You know, it's only been 2 days, a day and a half since you aired your report. We have in that time formed a sort of a mini task force with the Queens DA's office.
We are aggressively pursuing our investigation. We will impanel a grand jury within the next few days to begin hearing evidence in this case, and we will pursue the entire case and leave no stone unturned.
And things were just beginning at that point. Looking at their faces as they try to process what you're saying, how am I going to lie my way out of this, right? That's just delicious. Well, it really is.
I tell you, the funniest part of the whole thing actually was when I confronted Andy in the parking lot in College Point, where we saw him actually loading hundreds of cases of paper onto a truck. And he went to attack me. You saw him grab for the camera, but he thought he could take me and my cameraman down.
Physically?
Physically. That's what he was trying to do. He was trying to throw the camera to the ground. And I guess he took a look at me, and he took a look at the cameraman, who was about my height. But CBS had hired 2 off-duty police officers, and we also had 2 other undercover cameras.
You had backup.
So he looked at me, and there was me, and then there were 5 other people next to me, and he goes, "Who are all these people?" And I said, "They're all with me." And then he confessed.
Checkmate. Confessed on camera. Got a Peabody Award for this.
I did.
How about that?
It was amazing.
So gratifying.
It was. And I also have to say that my producer at the time, Patty Aronofsky, who's now gone on to bigger and better things at 48 Hours, was instrumental because she also followed these trucks for months.
Absolutely. Story's not over here. When the look back continues, the school supply scandal turns deadly. Don't go away. In 1995, as allegations of corruption at the city school system's Bureau of Supplies multiplied, the then Chancellor, Ramon Cortines, shut down the warehouse in Queens. NYPD and the Queens DA reopened their investigations of 3 unsolved murders of custodians who worked in the warehouse. Unsolved murders, Marcia. Before we take a look at the story, I mean, the plot really thickened.
It did indeed, and it was sort of an amazing thing because they didn't find the bodies all at once. And so they kept another one and another one and another one, and it led to a long investigation.
Started to piece it together.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look back at these stories.
For nearly 2 weeks, we've been telling you how stealing school supplies from the Board of Ed Bureau of School Supplies is as easy as adding 1 and 1 and getting 2. But what we didn't tell you is that Schools Chancellor Ramon Cortines has known that equation for months. In a December 8th report to the Chancellor, a blue ribbon panel found, quote, "The physical security of the Bureau of Supply facility is weak. For example, we noted a TV monitoring system with an initial cost of $460,000 not being used." The report also found that blunders are occurring with regularity, showing some core institutional failures. Cortines finally shut the supply warehouse down today, 12 days after we caught school drivers red-handed as they sold school supplies to private businesses. All this comes as the same warehouse is the focal point of 3 unsolved murder investigations. Probes that 3 people with jobs at the Bureau of Supply were slain because investigators believed they knew too much about massive theft and payroll padding there.
I miss her, man, for years.
The man Rocco DeSimone misses is his younger brother Andy, who along with his girlfriend Deborah Huck went to work as school custodial workers one day 6 years ago and never returned. Rocco is still heartbroken.
He's a beautiful guy, man. He's one of the nicest people you could have wanted to know. And it scares me to think that people are so cruel and rotten to want to just take him out of the world and away from me.
Rocco learned the sad truth about his brother's life and suspected death by watching Channel 2. He saw a report yesterday about how homicide detectives think his brother and his brother's girlfriend were brutally killed because of what they knew about thefts and payroll padding. And it gets even more diabolical. Authorities believe that after the two were killed, their bodies were thrown into the furnace in this building. And yes, it is the Bureau of Supplies building in Queens. Authorities believe the bones were then taken from the bottom of the furnace to a watery creek in upstate Monticello.
He knew too much and he was going to open up, blow the whistle.
Police are still searching for the people who killed Andy DeSimone, Deborah Huck, and a third Bureau of Supplies custodian, John Thomas. I'm Marcia Kramer, Channel 2 News. Jack Marchese and Andy Baraba were brought into Queens Supreme Court in handcuffs today to face charges of grand larceny and bribery. And here's why. 4 months ago, Channel 2 News caught them red-handed participating in a massive fraud scam in which school supplies that belong in your kids' classrooms were sold on the black market. Queens DA Richard Brown and school prosecutor Ed Stancic charged Baraba and Marchese with grand larceny and bribery today because they confirmed Channel 2's findings. And they didn't sell the stuff on the black market a few times like Baraba said either. Baraba and Marchese were charged with running this scam from 1990 until we caught them last January. That's 4.5 years of ripping off your kids.
Wow, and it came to an end there. So what was the end result for these guys?
They did big time. My recollection is that they each got 20 years.
Well-deserved?
Well-deserved.
Well-earned, right? Now, what's the city done to make sure anything like this doesn't happen again?
Well, there's no more school warehouse, supply warehouse. And as a matter of fact, I continued investigating other things that were run by the same people. And so all of those people who were running this also lost their jobs.
But
they weren't convicted of any crimes. They were convicted of not managing their facilities.
Right. But it would seem that such a scheme would almost be easy to pull off, to take supplies and just sell them as they want today.
Well, as you could see from the pieces, they had people inside the school warehouse who were getting kickbacks to say, okay, take an extra 100 cases, take this, take that, and they would, there was a going rate for how much they would have to pay to get the goods.
Yeah, eliminating the warehouse eliminated that possibility. Okay, well done, Marcia.
Transfer all the people.
Yes, thanks. That was amazing. Well, wouldn't we all love to get around rush hour traffic in this city?
You're going to something in the morning when you leave your house that's an emergency.
We're usually going to important meetings.
Lights, sirens, and the breakdown lane. We're going to show you how Marcia got to the bottom of this story when we come right back. Welcome back. Back in 2004, Marcia Kramer exposed how dozens of city officials in the early days of Mayor Mike Bloomberg's administration had their chauffeur-driven cars equipped with a special police package, including a siren that was used to drive through rush hour traffic. They would drive all along the shoulders and apparently avoid gridlock, but what one city official didn't realize was that Marcia Kramer was hot on their trail.
There are many ways to get to work. Some, like Mayor Bloomberg, take the subway every day, but others have apparently found a way to bypass the annoying crunch of a rush hour commute. What allows this top-level city official to drive with immunity are the flashing emergency lights and sirens on the car that allows her to bypass traffic jams and get to work in record time. Numerous times over a period of months, CBS2 has caught the car carrying the deputy mayor for legal affairs to and from City Hall and her Riverdale home. This despite the fact that her boss, the mayor, has a strict policy. No lights and sirens except in an emergency. Former Traffic Commissioner Sam Schwartz says it's not only mayoral policy, it's the law.
The vehicle and traffic law is very clear. Section 375-41 says for red lights, you must really be an emergency vehicle.
Is there some emergency?
I can't tell you that there is one. I have to tell you. I can't tell you that.
One morning this week, I saw the deputy mayor on the Henry Hudson Parkway. Around 246th Street, her driver suddenly put on the flashing emergency lights and pulled off onto the right shoulder of the highway. He drove down the shoulder, almost to the entrance to the Henry Hudson Bridge. And in busy rush hour traffic, he then moved left into the adjoining lane. He then moved left again, moving 2 lanes over to the cash lane where there is less traffic. Just before the toll plaza, he moved right, crossing a double white line to get into the Easy Pass lane. The next day, we caught the car again using flashing lights to get to work. The car rode the shoulder. To get the shot, we did too, then quickly got back into the right lane. Later on the West Side Highway, her car cut off a city police vehicle. Traffic experts say that driving like that can cause chaos on the road.
There is turbulence, there is confusion, there are accidents that get associated with an emergency vehicle passing through.
Can you tell me that you're going to something in the morning when you leave your house that's an emergency?
We're usually going to important meetings, different meetings. I'm not a firefighter and I'm not a police officer, so I can't tell you that I'm going to put out a fire.
Robles Roman, who once participated in a seminar in ethics in government at New York Law School, said she didn't know the driver was using lights and sirens.
I usually have my head down.
Why do you do it?
I have no comments, ma'am.
The Department of Citywide Administrative Services, which employs driver Paul Lee, says lights and sirens are only for emergency use. Our drivers have been instructed they are not to be used during the course of normal business, the agency said. We will be investigating this incident and will take appropriate action. But city drivers are furious.
If it's not an emergency, then, you know, what are you doing it for?
I think that's absolutely absurd. I mean, the rest of us can't do it. We get a ticket if we did something like that, wouldn't we?
I think you should wait in line like everyone else.
Today, when the deputy mayor left for work, her wheels were a whole lot humbler than normal. Her plush Ford Crown Victoria was in the shop, and she was using a GMC Jimmy from the motor pool. Her usual car's lights and sirens were being disabled. City Hall said it was at the deputy mayor's request. And today, while we followed her and her driver, we saw them dealing with traffic just like everyone else, not using lights and sirens to avoid the hassles of the typical bumper-to-bumper New York City rush hour commute. Robles Roman's privilege romps into the city with lights and sirens irritated regular New Yorkers.
Someone's getting ahead of me because they got the lights on and I have to sit in traffic for 15 or 20 minutes. It's a bad thing.
Somebody could get hurt moving out of his way. It's misuse of authority.
Actually, traffic experts say that what the deputy mayor did, riding on the shoulder to avoid traffic and moving in and out of lanes, is very, very dangerous. And that may be one reason why, in the wake of our investigation, the subway-riding Mayor Bloomberg demanded an inventory of the city's fleet of 27,000 cars to determine who has lights and sirens and for what reason. Carol Robles Roman's cushy rides to City Hall violate the mayor's own rules, and mayoral aides say Bloomberg is looking to pare down the number of city officials with those perks. When Mayor Bloomberg got done slicing and dicing his list of civilian employees with lights and sirens in their cars, there were precious few who made the cut. First Deputy Mayor Mark Shaw got to keep them, and so did Press Secretary Ed Schuyler and Chief of Staff Peter Madonia. But as for the others, well, 2/3 of those who had the perk are saying sayonara. Can you tell me that you're going to something in the morning when you leave your house that's an emergency?
We're usually going to important meetings, different meetings. I'm not a firefighter and I'm not a police officer, so I can't tell you that I'm going to put out a fire.
That was Deputy Mayor for Legal Affairs Carol Robles Roman's response after a CBS2 investigation caught her using lights and sirens. Our investigation cost Robles Roman the privilege of having lights and sirens, but the story apparently so irked the subway-riding Mayor Bloomberg that today he took away the privilege from most of the people who had them, including many of his senior aides. Before his purge, there were 328 people who had lights and sirens. The mayor took the privilege away from an unbelievable 255 people, 78%, leaving only 73 civilian employees with lights and sirens.
You know, these were important meetings these people were going to.
Very important.
Not just meetings. These were very important meetings. We should point out that you were the one driving behind the wheel on the shoulder while your cameraman was shooting the video.
Yeah, I was, and I was real nervous about it, too, because, you know, I was breaking the law.
Right, but it worked out.
Well, I had to drive because he had to shoot, so...
Yeah, it was. But I got, as I pointed out in the thing, I got right back in.
When the mayor heard about all this stuff, he had to be just beside himself.
But he wasn't happy with me either.
He was not happy with you.
No, because he had to then take lights and sirens away from like half of his staff, 3/4 of his staff.
But they don't.
They weren't happy. They like lights and sirens.
Did anybody really need them? I mean, is that like a real thing?
Well, I think that if you're responding to a police emergency.
Sure.
Or a fire emergency, you could justify like a fire commissioner running to the scene or a police commissioner running to the scene.
But not just important meetings.
Well, important meetings, no.
Leave the house earlier? Maybe that.
Well, that was another problem with Carol. She was always late.
I got to tell you, just as I was coming into work today, someone with lights and sirens was cutting me off. Those are probably illegitimate, just folks using aftermarket gear on their cars, right?
Well, there's some people that are called berserkers.
Yeah.
And they are the ones that try to get lights and sirens. But some city officials still have lights and sirens.
Still goes on.
Still goes on.
So maybe there's another story in the works.
I think I'll have to try to get on that.
Careful behind the wheel. Another one well done, Marcia. Thank you so much. I'm really enjoying this. I hope you are too. And I know our viewers are. And do join us next time when we take a look back at some of the most high-profile political stories Marcia has covered, many of them ending in scandal, others even leading to an unexpected confession that made news around the globe. We want to thank you so much for watching A Look Back. For Marcia Kramer, I'm Maurice Dubois. Have a good night.